Welcome.
Hi, my name is Jan, and today I'm going to talk to you about cleaning greenware. Greenware is what your item is before it is basically cleaned and fired. It's cast into a mold, and the mold leaves marks, seam marks. Now this little piece is in bisque and has been cleaned so that there are no seam marks on it. This is what we're trying to achieve today. There are various molds. This mold happens to be a two-piece mold, so it leaves a nice even seam in every direction. I have one here that is actually a three-piece mold, and as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3 areas here that leave seams that have to be re-sculpted so that you can have a nice looking piece. When you start cleaning, you have different tools. There are sanders. There's actually what we call a cleaning tool. And the various items that I have here are ones that you can use in different areas that are necessary to make it look like you did the hand sculpting. Now, when you're working with a cleaning tool, you want to go crossways like this so that you're not digging into it. As you can see, it comes off pretty easy, which is an indication that this is very, very fragile. You don't want to squeeze on it very much, and so you keep going with this. You also, because this is a round piece, you don't want to go and flatten it. So we're going to use a sander like this, following the contour of the piece. We are going to go back and forth until we, as you can see, that seam just disappears and it's a nice smooth surface. Now, if you think you're getting a flat surface, go in a circular motion. That'll keep you from making that flat surface on there. And we're going to go and continue to take off the seams that are on here. And make sure you look, and this is where you have to really be observant. Look at it from all angles. Sometimes it's really hard to, when you first start, to see all the angles that can be. If you don't clean them off at this point, when it is fired, they kind of pop out and make ugly spots on your piece, and we don't want that to happen. Okay, so as you can see, you can feel it. Do not take your finger and go this way, because you won't feel the seam at all. You need to go what we call cross grain and go across the seam so that you cannot see it, nor can you feel it. Sometimes you won't see it, but you can feel it. Now the bottom of this, I want it to be very flat. I have a piece of screening here that I use to flatten vases and cups and things. And what I do is I make sure it's level. I grab a hold of it and I go in a circular motion. And as you can see from here, it is sanding it down to where I have a nice flat bottom. On vases and mugs and bowls, anything like that, you want it to be flat, because if it's not flat, it's going to wobble, and you don't want the piece to wobble. By taking the screen and securing it to a board, it gives it more stability. It gives it a stable place so it's not wobbling back and forth. But you can see, now I have some imperfections on here, and this is something you have to go and take your sander and perfect the bottom of it. The bottom is just as important as the top. A lot of people think, oh, it's just the bottom, nobody sees it. Well, unfortunately, in my studio, I'm the one that sees it, and I'm the one that hands it back to my students. I do have another piece that I use, and it's for actually round necks and things like this. This is the surface of the top of the vase. We want this to be as smooth, as perfect as any of the others. While I'm doing this, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the dust. If you are asthmatic, if you have emphysema, if you have any kind of an allergy, you might consider wearing a mask, because this is a fine dust. Clay does contain silica, and silica, if it's breathed into your lungs, can stick and create a problem, and a lot of times people don't realize that. So what you want to make sure you do is wear a mask so that you can protect yourself against that fine dust. You can also see I am actually cleaning on top of a terry cloth towel. That way, if it gets down into the little fingers of the towel, and it collects the dust so that it just doesn't fly across the room. Now what I'm doing is I'm making sure that that lip is smooth. We don't want to have a area that you can see. You know, we want it to look like it comes out of a museum or an art place. We want it to be perfect, so to speak. So we're going down and we're going around. Now, if you have a piece that has to be cleaned in this area, I have a cone. This cone is used and put in here, and by going around like this, I'm going to get a perfect circle. If I try to do this by hand, sometimes I get a little bit of a wonky circle, and I don't like wonky circles. I want it to be perfectly round, like this. So we've got one side of it clean. So let's take another minute here and quickly do the other side, so I get it completely cleaned up. As you do this over the years, you get to where you can do it a little faster. I tell you, at first, when you first start, take your time. Cleaning is the most important process of any item that you paint, because if you don't get rid of all of the imperfections and the seams, that piece is not going to be perfect when you paint it, and it's going to show. I don't care what kind of painting you do on it, but that seam is going to be visible, and you don't want that to be. Most people today buy their pieces to paint already cleaned and fired, so you don't do what I'm doing right now. When I started in the 1960s, we didn't have bisqueware like we have today, and so we had to clean our own. So there we go. Now that I have this done, I'm going to turn it upside down, gently tap it, so I make sure I don't have any dust inside. Then I have a container with a sponge. That I'm going to take, and I take out all the water. You can see there's nothing in there, it's just damp. I don't want to wet this down because it's going to deteriorate the clay. And if I had any kind of design on it, I would end up losing that design. So what I've done is I have just taken off the loose dust that's on the outside, because as it's fired, it will stick with it. So now that one is ready to fire. I'd like to talk a little bit about pieces that have detail in them. These are the ones that you have to be very careful in cleaning, because if you'll notice, it has texture, it has a detail. So this crooked end of my cleaning tool is what I use most of the time. And I do most of my cleaning with this because I do not want to lose any of that detail. I want that detail to come back so they think, oh, look at that. That's gorgeous. Look, it's got all the detail. It's got all the different designs that we want to use. So you do it very, very carefully. And as you can see, it's one of those things where you just take your time. This takes you a lot more time than something that is smooth, like the vase I just finished. But you want to continue until you have everything down. Now, if you'll notice on the bottom of this, there is a round hole. Very important. That's called a pour hole, and that pour hole needs to be smooth. It needs to be as smooth as any place on this thing. When this clay is fired, it becomes sharp, and if I took my hand in through here and went like this, I would end up cutting myself. So here's where I use my comb, and I go back and forth. Now, I'm not putting any pressure on this. I'm actually letting the cone do the work for me, and by doing that, I'm going to end up with a nice smooth surface that is perfectly round, which is what I want. As you can see, it's nice and smooth around there. That's what I want. I don't want any areas that are sharp. Okay. Now, as I go along, I'm taking off the seam. Now, again, I don't want to take off any of the details. So I'm going to take my sander, and on the bottom, I'm going to take and sand off a little bit of the. So I have a bottom that looks perfectly round, perfectly smooth. Then I continue. If I have detailed or taken and cleaned any area, like on this scarf, if you'll notice there's a lot of detail on this. I don't want to lose that. I want it to look like that's perfectly. But if you'll gently let your tool, this is where you have to let your tools do the work for you. You don't put pressure on there, because if you put pressure on there, you're going to end up with a mess. So, as you can see, I have taken it off up through here, and I'm going to take this, and this is one time where I'm going to use just the tip of my sander, and I'm going to do it in a circular motion. That seems to take off less of the detailing than it does if I go like this. If you go like this, you're going to flatten it. So you want to make sure unless you have a smooth surface, you want to make sure you go in a small circular area. And you continue on with this until you have this little snowman back to his original state, which is what the sculptor did originally. You continue on as you get more and more. This one again, when you get done with this and you have all of your detailing and everything, again, you take your sponge, you squeeze out all the wetness. And this is a case where you're going to take your sponge and you're just going to roll it over the top of that seam. That picks up the dust, but it leaves the detailing alone. If you rub it really, really hard, you're going to take out all that detail, which is what makes him so really, really cute. So continue on until you get all of it done. And then at the end, whenever you finish any piece, as any artist should do, you're going to take and put your name on the bottom, or your initial, and put the year. That's important, because that way you know when you did it. And if it sticks around in your family for 30 to 40 years, they'll know when you did it. So that's how you clean Greenware. That's how you end up with a piece that is an art piece and that you can enjoy for a long, long time. Thank you for watching. Like us on Facebook, like us on YouTube, like us on Instagram, and you can even join me. I have a website at janceramic.com. So thank you again, and look forward to talking to you again.